So anyway, the gentleman that came to me, his name's Jim Tippets. He's also known as Jimmy Crossbones. And he came to me and he said, you know, you're going to hear about this story, and a lot of people are going to start talking about it. So what I'd like for you to do is share the story. And I'm a writer, and I'm a photographer, and I'm an adventurer. And I'm not a diver on the 1715 fleet like some people think. I'm a scuba diver, and I've looked for megalodon teeth, and I've dove on some of the wrecks, but I'm not an actual treasure diver. Okay, I just want to clarify that. Gary is. And by the way, Gary's website, if you've never seen it, it's called mydetector.com. Gary makes some of the most incredible art I've ever seen, miniature art. But I'm more of an adventurer. And personally, for me, I'm just going to share a couple of things, and then I'm going to get into some other things, and then I'm going to tell you about the story that I wrote. So, the whole treasure hunting thing, I feel like that it's something I've been interested in since I was very young. I used to follow Mel Fisher when I was a kid. He hadn't found me a tocha yet. And when I graduated from high school, I actually got certified to dive because my plan was to go down and try to dive with him. But then other things happened and I didn't do that. But I believe that if you're a treasure hunter like we are, like you guys are, and you're all here for a reason, it's either in your DNA or it's not. You either want to find things, you want to discover things, you're curious, you have a mind to look for things. And that's the way I am. I'm always looking for adventure. So if you've got an adventure and you think you'd like for me to join you, I'd be interested. So just call me. Now, you know when Dan was talking about his family, I related to that. That's my greatest treasure. I'm sorry. But the thing is, people look for treasure. But you probably, just think about your family, your kids. That's your greatest treasure. Now, in the treasure hunting community, you meet these people here that share these stories, and what happens is they pass away, and a lot of that information is lost. And that's sad. But so when you have the opportunity to talk to these folks who have this information, do it while you can, because you may not ever be able to talk to them again. Gary and I have a mentor that was a mentor to a lot of people who dove with Mel Fisher. He was a treasure hunter all over the world. Some of you may know him. His name is Carl Fismer. Carl would talk to anybody. He would share stories with anybody. Had some of the greatest diving, treasure hunting stories, and knew a lot of very famous people. But he was very humble. And I'm just trying to give tribute to him tonight. Carl passed away 3 days ago. So anyway, he's in a better place. He probably found some gold treasure in heaven. So we just wanted to give tribute to him. So one of the things I wanted to ask y'all, how many of you guys are interested in following Spanish treasure, the Spanish Trail? So you may not know this. There's a book. Where's James O'Farrell? He's going to help me out here. I didn't bring any slides. I didn't know that we were able to do that. So what I did is I did a lot of photography. And I'm going to share that photography. I'm actually going to let you guys pass the pictures down and just look at it. And there's a book called El Norte, written by Carrie Gibson. She's a PhD from Cambridge. And in the front of the book, there's a diagram of North America, and it details by year where all the Spanish explorers, the conquistadors, went through North America. If you're really interested in following where they went, get that book. And she also wrote a second book on the Spanish explorers in the Caribbean. But I was going to pass this around and let y'all look at it. Is James O'Far here? Anybody here? I need you to help pass this out. All right. So just to give you an example.
I'm sorry, buddy.
No worries. Everybody talks about what happened in 1776. Anybody know? Declaration of Independence, right? We were fighting for our independence as a country. What was happening in 1776 where we're at right now? Anybody know? Exactly. So while they were fighting over on the northeast of North America, Spanish explorers were here, but they weren't just here. They were all over North America and South America. So I'm going to let James pass that out. Y'all just pass it around and look at it. And of course, you probably heard about Ponce de Leon. He was in Florida, so we had them all over the place. So this article that I wrote, it's titled Tragedy, Triumph, and Treasure. And it's the story that Jim Tippets told me. Now, when he wanted me to write the story, I wanted to be very, very precise, and I wanted to be accurate, and I didn't want to tell a story that wasn't true. So when he shared it with me, I did all the research on the 1715 fleet, and then I did all the photography. And then I said to Jim, I can't tell this story unless I actually see and physically hold the treasure that you found. And he said, okay, come to my house and I'll let you do that. Now what's interesting is after I wrote the story and it was published in American Digger magazine, it did really well, and I got people calling me, and they actually won a Freelance Writers Award for it. And I've actually got probably 12 copies of it over to 10 if anybody wants to read it. But after that, another gentleman named Matt Howell with Gone Digging heard the story and he said, we've got to get this on film. So he brought in a videographer from Hollywood, who's his brother-in-law, and they interviewed Jim for about 15 or 20 minutes. And the story on YouTube is called Feet in the Sand. So if you ever want to look it up, you can watch the video based on the story that I wrote. It's Gone Digging YouTube group, and it's called Feet in the Sand. What was interesting was James was coming to visit me, and I said, hey, I got something I want you to see. And so he went with me and was able to hold all the gold and the treasure that we're talking about. Now, I will tell you, how many of you ever have held a handful of gold coins? If you raise your hand. You got one here, you got a few of them back here. I don't know what your experience was like, but James and I confirmed this. It's an unreal feeling that I've never felt before and I've never felt since. When you hold that gold in your hand, there's just something about it that I just never experienced. Boy, it's just a different feeling. And so when James was over there, they were doing the filming, he was allowed to hold all that coinage. So it's pretty interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the 1715 fleet. How many of you know about the 1715 fleet? Okay, we got a few of you. So, you know, I'm in Florida, you're in Utah, and the connection is you got Spanish conquistadors getting gold and silver and jewels all out of South America and bringing it back to Spain. Some of those explorers went up through Mexico all the way up here to Utah. Some of them were coming off South America, landing in Cuba, reloading, and then going back up the east coast of Florida, back to Spain. So in the 1715 fleet, it's called the 1715 plate fleet, or La Plata, meaning silver or money. And the king of Spain was in the middle of a war, and it was a very expensive war. So they had been collecting or mining for gold and silver for over 3 years, and he sent 2 different fleets to go pick up all this treasure and bring it back to Spain to help them finance the war. So there was one group from Bogota, one group from Veracruz. They loaded 11 galleons, fully loaded, with gold and silver. And the other thing that was going on was the king had just gotten remarried. So he was loading up treasure for his wife, for the dowry. And it's what's called the Queen's Jewels. Now the Queen's Jewels were all loaded into a box and put into the cabin of the admiral of the fleet. So I'm going to read you just a paragraph of what was loaded on these ships. This is just a part of what was loaded on the ships, just so you get an idea of how big this was. And this was all going back to Spain. The Nuestra Senora del Carmen was laden with gold bars, doubloons, and silver. An equal amount of wealth was on board the Nuestra Senora del Rosario in 1,000 chests, and the Senora de la Concepcion, also known as the Urca de Lima, carried hundreds of chests of coinage as well. The Nuestra Senora de la Regla carried 1,300 chests of nearly 3 million silver coins, gold coins, chests of uncut emeralds and pearls, and Chinese porcelain. So, it was all led by General Don Juan Esteban de Avila, commander of the fleet. In total, there were 11 galleons. Actually, they talk about 12 ships that were in the fleet. And I've got to do a little bit more research, but I always thought it was 12 Spanish galleons. What we learned was one of the ships was a French ship that joined the other 11, and they were just going to join the Armada and go back to Europe. So the ships got a little bit delayed. They knew what a hurricane season was, but obviously back then they couldn't track hurricanes. So they were getting everything loaded in Cuba, and there were some delays because some of the supplies had not come from South America, from Mexico yet. But by the time they finally got everything loaded and moving, it was on, let me look at some dates here, I want to make sure I'm accurate here. They set sail on July 24th in the morning and left Havana, Cuba with all of these ships fully loaded. And they started heading to the southern coast of Florida. And around the 29th, the weather started getting worse. This is July 29th, 1715. And as they got worse and worse, the captain of the French ship that was traveling with him veered off to the east because he wanted to get away, whereas the Spanish galleons all started hugging the coast of Florida because they wanted to try to be protected. Unfortunately, they were doomed. The only ship that made it back to Spain was the French ship. And I say not back to Spain, back to Europe. All 11 of the Spanish galleons sank off the coast of Florida. And it was on July 31st of 1715. And if you think about this, just think about being in one of those ships and the hurricane coming in, the wind, the rain. They're just looking for survival. I mean, it's just incredible. So there was about 1,500 sailors that died during this, but there was another 1,000 that survived. So they set up a survivors camp, what is in an area that's now called Hutchinson Island. And Spain, and of course, the word got back to Spain that all of this treasure was lost, including the Queen's jewels. And today, and I'll just tell you this right up front, the Queen's jewels have never been found. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Like they know, for example, that there's a 74 karat emerald that was made just for her. That's never been found. So anyway, it was a bad situation. And obviously the king never got his money. So Spain decided to send ships back to try to get as much of the treasure as they could back and salvage all of it between 1716 and 1719. The problem is everybody else found out about it too. So now you got pirates running in there trying to get it before Spain does, and not only trying to get it, actually taking it from other salvors. In fact, they went in and ravaged the survivors and took a lot of stuff away from them. So, you know what I'm going to do? Because I know it's going to take some time. I'm just going to let James start passing some pictures around. And what I'm going to tell you is, and I'll finish the story, the pictures you're going to see are the treasures that Jimmy Crossbones, found on a beach with a metal detector. Now, I'm sharing this story with everybody because this could be anybody. People ask me all the time, can you find treasure with a metal detector? And this is a great example of somebody being at the right place at the right time with the right equipment. And so, you know, if I put it up on the screen, you're not going to get the same effect. We blew these pictures up so you can get a real good look as you pass the pictures down to see what an actual gold escudo looks like. See what it's our pass those around? Yeah. All right. So the survivors, now I want to give you a mental picture. How many of you been to Florida in July or August? You know how hot it is? Gets up to 99, 100 degrees, 101 degrees. So they just wrecked. They're in survivor mode. It's July 31st. It's incredibly hot, humid, mosquitoes. They're just trying to survive. Now there is a fort in St. Augustine that had already been built by the Spanish called Castillo de San Marcos. How many of you ever been to that fort? Still there today, if you go visit it. You know, they bail it as St. Augustine is America's oldest town. That fort is still there. Some of those survivors made it up to St. Augustine to that fort, and the fort sent supplies down to some of the survivors to help keep them alive. But Spain gave up after about 3 years. So we don't know between then and modern times, you know, who found what, but they speculate that somewhere between 30 to 70% of it made it back to Spain in the salvage operation. So nobody really knows. But what they will tell you is there are millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of gold and treasure still out in that water. And even as we speak here today, treasure salvers are out there every day in boats during the summer looking for it. So fast forward a little bit to 1948, a building contractor named Kip Wagner was walking down the beach and he found 7 silver coins from the 1715 fleet. And of course that got him really excited. So for the next few years, he just started looking for them, got a metal detector, got bigger. He formed a company called Real 8. And over the next few years, next 10, 15 years, he found millions of dollars worth of that treasure. Now, what was interesting about that is when anybody finds treasure, other people get interested. Is that true? So a gentleman out of California, in 1963, a gentleman out of California approached Kip Wagner and made a proposal. And he said, look, I'd like to join you in this venture. I'm going to form a group, and it's going to be called Treasure Salvers, and we'll give you part of everything we find. So they agreed, and they started working together. Anybody know who that was? That person actually moved to Florida to do this. Anybody know who that was? Kip Wagner was the original. Who was the person that joined Kip? That was Mel Fisher. Anybody know who Mel Fisher is? Yeah, Mel Fisher is probably one of the greatest known treasure hunters, salvers that we know of. and he discovered the Nuestra Senora de Atocha further south. But he started out working on the 1715 fleet. So in 1966, Kip actually wrote a book called Pieces of Eight, which is one of my main research books that I use to do the research. And that book's still available, so if you're interested in reading about it, you can read about the early days of that process of finding the treasure. More recently, if I can find the book, a gentleman by the name of Fred Banky wrote a book called The Real Deal, and it's called Metal Detecting the Florida Coast. And what I will tell you is if you ever come to Florida on vacation, which all of you do, get this book. It tells you where all the wreck sites are, and gives you a lot of the background information. And this is where I got the more of the recent information is from here. All right. So what happened next? Well, in 2010, a group called Queen's Jewels LLC bought all the lease rights to the 1715 fleet. So right now, anybody here in this group, that if you wanted to go treasure hunt the 1715 fleet, you could. They are the leaseholders, but you could sublease from them. And the way it works is the state of Florida gets 20% of everything you find. The Queen's Jewels LLC gets 80%, and then they have to pay the boat captains their percentage of whatever they find, and then they have to pay the divers. Most of the divers out there, they don't get paid. You know, they do it for the adventure, and if they're fortunate enough to find something, they get a piece of what they find. Some years, like when Mel Fisher and his team started finding the Atocha treasure, they made a lot of money. But most of the guys now out on the 1750, if they get lucky enough, they'll be able to do that. In 2015, it was the 300-year anniversary of the sinking of the 1715 fleet. They were celebrating, and there was a boat called the El Capitana, and it was captained by Jonah Martinez, and the subleaser was Eric Schmidt. And they were in pretty close to the shore, closer than anybody had ever been before, in 15 feet of water, and started finding gold coins, and more gold coins, and more gold coins. They ended up finding about $3 million worth of treasure on the 300th anniversary of the sinking of the 1715 fleet, which is pretty interesting. That was 300 years. So a lot has been found, and there's a lot still out there. So my friend Jim, in 2018, and by the way, I have no idea where he was at. It's a very closely guarded secret. I know it's in that area, but he tells me that it's in an area that where none of the other ships that have been currently located is at. So we know that about 8 of the 11 ships have been identified, but there are others that have not been identified. This is possibly one of those ships that has not been identified. Jim was out there. Now what happens is, what do you think happens after a hurricane in Florida? What happens to all the treasure hunters? Where do they go? They all go to the beach. Everybody goes to the beach, right? So this was not a hurricane. What happened was 2 northeast storms came through Florida back to back and took off about 12 to 15 feet of sand in southeast Florida. And by the way, have you ever heard of the term treasure coast? That word came from the 1715 fleet because of all the stuff that had been found. So 2 northeasters come through, not a lot of people out there, very few people out there. Jim goes out there with his metal detector, and he finds some gold cufflinks. Now, they're not just any gold cufflinks. They actually have, now he doesn't really know what he's found at the time, but he has a friend of his that is very familiar with the fleet, and he calls him and he said, hey, this is what I found. And he describes it. And the cufflinks have a dogwood flower on them. And the dogwood flower, to the Spanish, this was the New World, but the dogwood flower was also like a new birth. So it could potentially be very valuable or, interesting artifact. When he called his friend, he said, I think you found something from the 1715 fleet. So he went over there with a metal detector. And they both started finding gold escudos, silver reals, artifacts. And of course, you can imagine if any of us were in that same position, we would be pretty excited, right? Well, he started documenting all this on video, and he got pretty excited. So I've seen all those videos. So the challenge that Jim had, his mother was dying. And I get choked up about family. But he had a choice to make. He said, I either got to look for the treasure or I got to go back and see my mother. So he left and went back to see his mother because he knew she wasn't going to be around very long. And his brother said, well, there's nothing you can do here. And you should go back and find as much as you can. So he did. And this lasted about 2 weeks. And on the day that he found his very last coin, his mother passed away. He's got all the treasure. Now, people ask me, is he allowed to keep that? Now, I don't know if you know this, but in Florida, Mel Fisher finally found the Atocha, and the state of Florida took everything. I don't know how many of you knew that story. Okay, what you may not know was when they took it all, fortunately for Mel Fisher, he had some very wealthy backers who backed him in court. And I can't tell you exactly how many court cases it went through, but I want to say it's around up to 23 cases all the way up through the appeals system. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in Mel Fisher's favor, 100% of the treasure. Made the state of Florida give it all back. So, isn't that a great story? Now, that set legal precedent. So Mel Fisher went to the state of Florida and said, look, we're going to be doing this for a long time. Let's work together. I will voluntarily give you 20% of everything we find. You send the state archaeologist to work with us, map everything. So now the precedent has been set. The state of Florida gets 20% of any of the leaseholders' findings, and then they get the 80%. But in that, the ruling or what the precedent that has been set is that anything that's found, treasure-wise, between the low water line, or the low tide line and the dunes, is 100% finders keepers. So my best advice is anything you find in the water, drag it up on the beach. What I will tell you, and I know the pictures are passing around, and I'm just trusting you that they'll come back sometime tonight. Here's what Jim found. 4 gold, 8 escudos. And by the way, you guys all know that the gold coins are called escudos and the silver coins are called reals. And how many of you knew that our coinage, our silver dollars, our half dollars, or quarters are all based on the Spanish money? Anybody know that? Well, think about it this way. We were fighting the British. We didn't have a mint. A lot of our trade was done with Spanish coins, or Spanish money. I guess we just decided we weren't going to be following the British money system. a pound and all of that. So we went with the Spanish. Anyway, so he found 4 gold, 8 escudos, 9 gold, 2 escudos, 1 silver, 8 real, 27 silver 2 reals, 6 silver half reals, 1 gold cufflink, 1 small gold ring, dozens of artifacts. Now, one of the things that we've learned in this process is there's the documented amount of items that are loaded onto a ship. It's all cataloged. But there was a whole lot more treasure on that ship in the form of contraband. So it's very likely that a lot of the people would wear a gold chain, they would wear a gold ring, they would carry gold on their person like jewelry. And the reason they did that was when they got back to Spain, it wouldn't be taxed. It was a personal effect. But if they were carrying gold coins or silver coins, that was going to be taxed because they're bringing it back. So there was a whole lot of contraband on these ships. So we don't know in total what was totally on there, but there was a lot. So Jim also found ship spikes, musket balls, a side plate to a musket, shoe buckles, all kinds of artifacts. And so that's pretty much the end of the story. It's an incredible story. Today, we've estimated, the people that have looked at it, they've estimated that it's worth between $400,000 and $500,000. There's one coin that's the picture's passing around where it's dated 1712, where the 12 has been restamped 1713, which makes it more valuable. That coin is worth about $40,000, or even higher. And the last coin I'm going to tell you about, I don't know, how many of you have ever heard of a royal, Spanish royal gold coin? Okay, so one back here. So what they did was, they would, if you look at these coins in these pictures, you'll see that they're not very regular. They're nice and they're pretty and all that, but they're not very regular. What they did was they would take very special coins and they would make them for the king. They were perfectly circular. They were beautiful. They were the best as you could ever find. They actually found one of those royals in 2015 with Eric Schmidt's group, and that coin is worth about $500,000 by itself. So there's lots of interesting side stories with that, but the 1715 fleet still goes on every day, and if anybody is seriously interested in being a part of it, you want to invest in it or whatever, I don't know that it's I couldn't even begin to tell you whether it's a worthwhile investment. You got to look at it as like, this is something you just want to be a part of. We can introduce you to the people who would be glad to let you be an investor, or if you want to be a diver or whatever, they'll tell you all the rules and regulations of that. But the last thing I'll tell you, and that's, unless anybody has any questions, I'll also tell you that in 2022, I spent some time in southern Utah looking for Spanish silver in some of the mines down there. So I've done some adventuring here in Utah, and I'm delighted to be here tonight to share this story with you. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, well, thank you. All right.
Yeah!
Wake you up. We all ready?
We're ready.
What's my first name? Who said Mark? That's wrong. Angus. Angus. No, it's all right. We're moving on. Who said Rob? Yeah, you're not participating. All right, so we're going to do the raffle. People have to leave, so we're going to go through. We've got a load of stuff to raffle off, right? The main item. Let's bring it all over here, James. I just want to thank James. He's my my wingman. Give him a hand. You clapping for him? Come get a hat and a t-shirt. You get nothing then. You. Come on over here. Just everything. It's all in my pocket. So James, he's my detector man. Whoa, we've got more stuff. It's like crazy. So James, I'm going to award him with a limited edition. James, This is a limited edition Fisher hat. There's only 7 in existence. The last one I saw on eBay was $500. No, I'm serious.
Thank you.
You cannot get these hats anywhere. So thank you, James, for helping me out. And in full transparency, it's probably only worth 3, but we won't even go there. In all full transparency, Russ is the VP or the marketing guy for Fisher. He couldn't make it here. I'm Russ's friend, and I wanted to come and experience this, and it's been fantastic. And I want to thank you for being wonderful, and it's just wonderful to be here with you guys. And I know I have this weird twisted English humor thing, and thanks for putting up with that. But Russ is kind of the Fisher guy, and I'm just his friend, and I'm helping him out. So let's get the raffle tickets, buddy, and you can pull, and I'll read, and we'll just crank it. This one is for the blanket. Terry, come on up and hold this beautiful thing. Now this is being held. Come on up here, please. Don't look at Terry.
Diane, who made
Diane, come on up here.
and donated this.
Yes.
She should come up here because this is absolutely beautiful.
So this is handcrafted by Diane, and it's just beautiful. And this, I wanted to give it justice because second place, it's just beautiful. Diane, thank you so much. Okay.
You ready?
Well, I'm ready. Are you ready?
Are we ready?
Thank you so much. Well done. Thank you so much. Well done. Okay. The grand prize.
All right, you're gonna pick it.
Terry's going to pick it.
Terry's gonna pick it.
Terry's not that tall.
Sorry, a little bit lower.
Go on. Go and get in there deep, Terry.
Blue.
Blue. James, hold that up. Let them see what it is. Now, I'll tell you, if you want to see the gold that I found with this, come see me afterwards. It is a fantastic gold machine, but not only that, it's a really good relic machine. So we'll find relics at the stove top, about 8 inches round, 18 inches down deep. It's going to find some big rusty iron things as well, so that's good. Blue. Tell Terry, he picked it, not me. 719 604.
Yeah, they're not here, so go ahead.
All right, put that back. No, I'm joking.
That's mine.
Winner. Happy man.
Check his ticket.
Checking his ticket. All right, 719 60. No, that's wrong, man. He's the winner.
Congratulations.
Take that. Don't stand there. Go on over there.
Oh, okay. Undo my jacket here. Let's see.
Just to let you know, I know where he's parked. Just wait for him out the back. You've got the bucket as well. Don't forget the bucket.
That's very kind of everybody's tickets.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. And then I'll do it like this. 5, 6, 7. Good. Thank you again for everybody. We'll hope to see you next year. Terry, you're a scholar and a gentleman. And your name is?
Kent.
Kent. All right, we need Mark Hoover and Gary over here, if you could, please. Dave here is going to do something special. Every time I see Dave, and now I just want to give him a big shout out. All the artwork that you see is all Dave's creation, and he is fantastic. Now, come on out the front, Jimmy. And he's very humble, but he's a big tease, right? Because every time I'd see him, he'd say, "I've got something for you." Since 8 o'clock this morning, I'm like, "Well, just give it to me," or later. And then, "Hey, I've got something for you." I said, okay. I said, can I? Oh no, later. We'll do it later. When would? So he's finally doing it.
Yeah.
You got something for me? What Dave's given us here is a plaque, and then some really, really cool artwork that was on the table over here. Look at this. This is fantastic. That's beautiful. Thank you again, everybody. You've been very hospitable and wonderful, and I really appreciate it. Oh, look at this.
Oh, man.
Wow.
That is fantastic.
How cool.
That is fantastic.